What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlecoff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, Middlecoff mailbag time at John Middlecoff. Instagram, fire in those DMs. Get your question answered here on the show. We will start with Douglas. This question is for the mailbag. As a lifelong Colts fan, I find myself more and more confused by Chris Ballard. While there are times he hits home runs on some late round picks, it's also true that we haven't won our division in years and have been a middle of the road team. If the Colts miss the playoffs again this year, is it time to move on? That's a good question. Most people I know like Chris Ballard. I think he's pretty solid. I was reading some article today when I was eating a sandwich at lunch. It was on The Athletic. It might have been Mike Sando's kind of breakdown. Anthony Richardson has missed 15 of the possible 23 games of his career. Of all the things that happened, listen, they tried to patchwork the quarterback position for years. It didn't work. I commend them for taking a big swing, but it's been kind of a disaster. Not even that his erratic play this year, but he doesn't play in games. I mean, thank God for Joe Flacco. I don't know, man. I think hiring Shane Steichen, you're gonna fire Ballard. You're not, because you wouldn't fire Steichen and then bring in a GM. Does he get to hire the guy? How would that work? I think you just kind of ride it out with these two guys for a couple years. Uh, I hear what you're saying, though. It's got to be frustrating because he's definitely well liked in the media, so he has a lot of support. But eventually, either win or lose games. And the Anthony Richard, when I saw that stat, I mean, it makes sense, right? He only played in a couple of games last year, shoulder out for the year. This year, I mean, gets hurt early on, has just been MIA now for 3 weeks. That could be the downfall. Now, luckily, like, what if you just start Flacco? Like, here's the thing. Are they better off rolling with Flacco this year and just not putting Richardson back in and trying to win 9, 10 games? Like, are their chances better to win 10 games if Joe Flacco starts the rest of the season or Anthony Richardson? It feels like Flacco because he's just a better player. I watched last night. I was cleaning up the kitchen. No big deal. It's what I do. Mainly because I don't cook that often. So she cooks, I clean. And I sometimes put on a podcast or something if she goes in the other room and just go to town, clean away. And I saw on YouTube, they just had like the cut up version of Flacco with McAfee. So I listened to it because Flacco's a good interview. And they asked him basically, like, are you playing the best football of your career? And he was torn because he's like, well, we played so much different in Baltimore. You know, I was asked to not play like I have been the last couple of years, and they've let me throw it in bombs away where they didn't let me do that last year. But he's a pretty solid player. I mean, there's no way around it. Richardson has moments, but like he also just can turn the ball over at rapid rates and have incompletions that kill you. So I get because they've invested so much, they're going to go back to him, but that could cost them games and cost them the playoffs. And like you said, how many years can you go on and just not have this situation play out with more wins? Mailbag question. Who's more worthless to their team? Sirianni to the Eagles or Patricia on Belichick's podcast? Well, Sirianni does lead team meetings and, you know, I'm sure has one-on-one individual meetings with players and coaches and leads coaching meetings throughout the week. Like, he's clearly doing things. Patricia, I clicked this morning after Devontae was traded. It came up on my YouTube algorithm that Belichick, Lombardi, and his thing were like, they gave opinions on Davante Adams. Now, I actually think they just ran this before the trade even happened because they had kind of gotten wind that it would happen. So they just kind of went over it. So I watched like 15 minutes of it. And every time Patricia talked, one, he talks, you know, it's crazy. Like, I get if you're not going to say anything controversial, if you don't want to piss anyone off, that's fine. You want to get back in the league. But then you got to have some curveballs that aren't just a cliche machine. I've never seen a guy who's worked in the NFL longer, who brings nothing to the table, who is not working in the NFL anymore and is now talking for a living. Belichick was taking some shots at the Jets, and Patricia just says nothing. He's like, yeah, and Devontae's trying to win, just trying to make plays and then try to win some more. It's crazy. It's insane. Like, I also thought if Sirianni's fired at the end of the year and Belichick goes to the Eagles, would obviously Patricia's doing this to go back with Belichick wherever he goes. But could he bring him back to the Eagles where he was terrible as a defensive coordinator? I don't know the details of how, it ended there personally, like with him and Howie and Lurie. Obviously, it didn't end well, but that's something to keep an eye on. One for the mailbag, all the way from sunny South Africa. I've always wanted to go to South Africa. I was thinking, is that a good spot for a honeymoon? Long flight, I know that. Maybe not honeymoon, but definitely a travel destination sometime in the next 5-10 years. I wanted to send a message for a long time, but I didn't have an Instagram. Not much into social media. I'm jealous. But downloaded it today just so I could send this message. So my question is this. Do you think the NFL will ever play a game in South Africa? We have a huge NFL fan base, and I would sell a kidney and liver to watch my Niners or at any moment, any NFL game here. I don't think you'd actually do that, but I like your passion. I would say the chances would be slim because of the travel. I'm pretty sure it's a really long flight. And for the 49ers, flying all the way from the West Coast adds an extra 5 hours. I know I've had friends that have gone to South Africa, and don't quote me on this, but isn't the flight, I think, from the West Coast like 18 hours? I mean, it's really, really long. I just don't think the NFL is going to ask their people to do that. I think Brazil was pushing it at like, what was it, like 8 for the Eagles, 7 for the Eagles? That's a long flight. The one thing nice about going to London is when the Jags play the Pats, I mean, you're talking 5-hour flights. So it's no different than the Pats coming to play the Chargers or the Jags coming to play Seattle. So I think the logistics of the travel make that pretty difficult. The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. At DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Running it from the one or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. Question for the bag. When I watch the Jags players on the sideline, to me, they come across as the ultimate collect a paycheck and chill team. If you watch Trevor's demeanor, it's not different from a regular NFL game than from a Pro Bowl. There's a noticeable, "aw shucks, it's all good, we get them next time" type vibe. So it's no surprise the team takes that attitude from him. On the other hand, when you watch players like Mahomes, even if they're behind just 3 points in a meaningless Week 4 game, he's out there rallying the troops nonstop. We are not losing this game over my dead body. The intensity and competitive drive is just off the charts. Even a young player like CJ was out there this weekend shoving tablets in his linemen's faces to show where they could do better. And that's when they were ahead by multiple touchdowns. Is it really possible that a generational prospect like Trevor Lawrence has that little passion for pro football? I went back this week to that pre draft article from Sports Illustrated. Here's what it said: he's not award driven. He's not, I want to win a Super Bowl at all costs. His father said, with who he is as a person, he could walk away from the game tomorrow and be just fine. Looking back, those words sound ominous. That's tough. With who he is as a person, he could walk away from it tomorrow and be fine. Can you imagine saying that about Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen? I don't think his failure is because he doesn't quote unquote love football. I think looking back, he was kind of an overhyped prospect. But I think when you go through adversity and you don't love what you're doing, it's easy to take the easy route and not try as hard. It's why I always like recommend to young people, because as you get older, it is more difficult to change careers because of family dynamics and kids and bills. Like it is hard. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's becomes more difficult the older you get. When you're young, the number one advice I always give anyone is to go into business, whatever you're going to do, with something you really, really like and be willing to not make much money at the beginning and bypass money in other industries that are more of a quick buck because over time, everything becomes a job. And when you enjoy what you're doing, you will be that much more willing to work hard. I would say most of the hardest workers I've ever met are people that own their business. Why? Because they take complete ownership in that. It's theirs. It's why you can never ask like an employee to work as hard as you if you own it. And I think from an ownership standpoint, it feels like, yeah, I'm just along for the ride. I just can't get over them giving him $200 million based off his first couple years in the league. That was insane. I get he's a good guy and likable, but I've said this forever about the NFL. It was a great experience for me. But one thing I knew, like I could never be a GM because deep down in my soul, I don't love football enough. Like I was around a lot of people and I saw like their love for football just trumped mine. I think it's pretty clear. Like I like football a lot, right? But being around Brett Veach, being around, Howie Roseman, Andy Reid, even Louis Riddick, like those guys are so much more in the depths of the nerdiness of football, which you have to have, which all these guys have. I mean, you can go around all the GMs. I mean, they're football obsessed. It's their life. And it's a huge part of my life, but it's not as big like to work in it and be great at it. And I would say this just in general in sports, like, go around Pat Riley, whoever, right? It's you got to be addicted to it. And that's for a player, coach, or an executive. And Trevor Lawrence, he told us before he even came in the league, like, hey guys, I'm not going to be addicted to this. This is not going to be, who's addicted? Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, like all the best guys in the league. The Watt family, TJ and JJ, right? I mean, you just go around the league to the best players. You're like, God, these guys fucking love football. Love football. Fred Warner, George Kittle. Like, I mean, you can't, the moment you start not giving every ounce of your energy and focus and mind and body to this sport, as a player, you have to give your body as well as a coach or an exec. It's just all your energy. You get lapped. And I think you see a guy who's just getting lapped. Like, listen, the reason John Dorsey took Baker Mayfield number one was like the intangible competitiveness. Obviously, he wasn't the biggest, he doesn't have the best arm of all time. He wasn't the fastest. And over time, like Baker could have been washed out of the league. But you know what? That guy fucking likes playing football. That guy really likes playing football. It showed at Oklahoma. It showed for spurts in Cleveland, but Cleveland needs people alive. Then he gets traded to Carolina. Like, not a great place. Remember the joy he had that night with Sean McVay in LA? And then what he's done the last couple of years. So I just don't, and just because you love it doesn't mean you're good enough. But if you have the talent and you love it, like it's really hard if you get in the right situation, because some of it's out of your control, like who's your offensive coordinator, who are your teammates, who's your organization. But if you get to a decent spot, a good spot, it's hard to fail, man. It really is. I say this all the time, like it's why I defend Purdy, why he's not going to go away. The intangible, the competitiveness, the dude's an addict. Dude's an addict. And if you're not, you don't have a shot. It's I say this all the time. I feel like I just reiterate this too much, but during draft time, when we're discussing these prospects, the media is obsessed. Like, let him have a balanced life. Which, listen, if you want to have some balance at wide receiver, whatever. When we talk quarterback, I can't have balance. Obviously, as you get older, you can have a wife and a family and stuff. But I'm just talking about like, you better say it's like football's my life beside my family because it is for all the best players, especially in my adult life. And honestly, it's not even debatable. So if you want to have like seven other things going on, like I'll bet against you. Or if you don't love football, like as a 10 out of 10, not like I like football. I enjoy playing on game day. No, you got to be addicted to the stuff Monday through Saturday. Tom and Peyton are just junkies over that. I remember talking to Veach at the was it this combine or might have been a couple combines ago? Maybe I was texting with him years ago. Remember when Mahomes rolled his ankle in the playoff game? Might have been against the Jags. And I think he ended up playing the next week too. But I remember Veach saying that he got to the office the next day at like 6 a.m. Might have been after the Super Bowl. Maybe this was to go to the Super Bowl. Maybe I was talking to him about the Miami Super Bowl. So this would have been when they first played the Niners way back, 5 years ago. And he gets to the office because you just, it's a lot going on, Super Bowl. You just kind of got to get your bearings on that Monday morning, even though you got 2 weeks. And he's like, I walked into the training room to like grab a Gatorade, and Patrick was just in there, just, getting treatment at like 5:45 or 6 a.m. watching the game on his iPad. You can't fake that because you got to love it. You got to love it. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know the kid, but his dad told us, like, why would his dad lie? You ever hear like these parents talk about their kids at the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Brady's? You ever think like, yeah, he could walk away? No one ever said that about those guys. Peyton had to be like, yeah, man, no one will sign you. We don't think you can throw. He's like, bro, I still want to play. No one called him back. I have a couple questions for the mailbag. What are your thoughts on Drake May's first start? And what advice would you give to someone trying to get into scouting? I have college football experience and coached in high school the last 4 years. I tried to get an intern position scouting assistant job out of college, but failed. I love the game and love evaluating talent. I would say on the advice, I would get into college. So I don't know where you played college football, but I would try to work for a college football program because that is the easiest stepping stone to the NFL. And ideally, the bigger the program, the better. You don't have to go to Bama or Texas, but if you could even get, D1 AA that where NFL scouts come through, or somehow get to a lower level Division 1 school, because that's the easiest way to meet scouts and kind of get your foot in the door. I had Drake May on kind of a smaller TV, and obviously they were getting their ass kicked early. Some of those throws he made were really nice. And to me, he showed enough. Like, here's the thing with Drake May, right? It's the physical attributes as a project why you wanted to work with him. And the go route, he threw another nice touchdown pass. He kind of ran around after a couple sacks. Like, you just like that's ultimately why you threw him in because Jacoby can't do any of that. But early on, he got sacked a couple times. It looked kind of discombobulated. The Texans versus you is not a fair fight. It'd be like me walking into a ring with Sugar Sean or something. You're just gonna get your ass kicked. So some people will say, like, to me, from a winning perspective, I don't put that much credence into Bo Nix fourth quarter against the Chargers. Like that doesn't I need that earlier in the game, right? Because I'm evaluating like, can this team make the playoffs? So like Colin goes, well, you look at that fourth quarter. Well, to me, like I at 3-2, their defense looked good. I'm like, God, could the Broncos win 10 games? And then you see a moment like that, you're like, at home, this can't happen. Where I'm cool with it happening to Drake May, you make all these plays in the second half, like, that's fine. Because you're gonna lose a lot of games. To me, can you provide hope? Can you just make some big plays? Can ideally in 3 or 4 weeks, can you score some early touchdowns in the game? But if some of your stuff's in garbage time, I can live with that. And you're really evaluating him more on just physical attributes. Like, what does the arm strength look like? What does the touch look like down the field? Are we going to be able to run this guy like Josh Allen? Like, does he have a future? Like, that's how I would evaluate him. I'd have to go back and watch all of his snaps because I just kind of look over when big plays happened. But listen, I liked him coming out. I'm a fan of projects. Like I have no problem swinging for I was a fan of the Anthony Richardson draft pick, and then part of it then is on the coaching staff, on the GM to then build the team to coach the guy up. It's risky, but I like risk. Some people like going in the slow lane. Kyle Shanahan doesn't like risk. He much more likes the sure, more basic thing. I come from the school more of Andy Reid. Like, take some swings. Might blow up in your face, but it might not. So now obviously they didn't have the number one pick. It's not like they chose him over all these other guys, but I totally um I would be excited if I was a Patriot fan. To me, that one go ball down the sideline was like that was fun. And I wouldn't put too much credence over like if all of his touchdowns happen over the next month when they're down several touchdowns, like, yeah, listen, your team sucks. So which is not his fault. He didn't control this. I also think it's hard with them is when your offensive line, like he's going to be running around for his life, which is probably a big reason why they inserted him because Jacoby can't move and you just need a guy. Now you just got to pray that he doesn't get injured. Like the Bills is going to be a tough matchup for him because the Bills got some pass rushers. I might just play Jacoby against the Bills. Question for the mailbag. Can you please explain what happened with ETN and why he went from potential superstar running back out of college to now a backup to Tank Bigsby? I was a big ETN guy. Even early on in his career, he would have some big plays. He was probably never going to be, a true between the tackles. He's not as physical, even as like smaller. Let's use Kamara as an example. Like Kamara's a really, really physical player. He has no problem lowering his shoulder. McCaffrey, those guys, we don't view necessarily as like Derrick Henry's or Bo Jackson, but like they enjoy contact. ETN was always going to be a space player. But I remember last year there were just some plays, get him on the edges, throw him the ball. Does he like football? I mean, honestly, does he? Because that's the one position where talented guys get lapped the fastest. Because so many players that just don't want it because you have to run so hard. You know what's crazy is you can tell like right away when a guy's kind of if the starter comes out and the backup comes in, especially if you don't know that much. Like some teams have like their first and second string guys are legit NFL guys, right? Like the Bears, you know, the 49ers had like McCaffrey, then Jordan Mason. But when Jordan Mason got injured, a couple guys, you're like, who is this guy? And early on, you'd see like, God, he's kind of just going down, not hitting the hole hard, right? Where if you watch the Lions, it's like Williams and Gibbs. Like these are two NFL running backs. The Eagles, Gainwell and Saquon. Like these are two guys that would play for any team. sometimes that drop off, it's like, God, this guy's not hitting the hole. And then you start getting exposed when the backup, it's like, this guy's fucking running his ass off. So part of it, and listen, we talk a lot about toughness in the NFL. And that was one thing Flacco said with McAfee. He's like, one defining characteristic that you have to have if you're going to be good in this league is like, you got to be tough. And there's no way to quantify it. There's no way you can scout it by watching the tape, but it's really, really hard. And he's because he was giving the example of Pittman, who was supposed to go on IR and then ends up playing, and just proving your toughness and playing through stuff is something that really resonates with players and coaches and really separates guys. And as a running back, to go straight down at 11 guys, maybe not 11 because all the DBs won't hit you, but 7, 8 guys within, I don't know, 15-yard radius are running toward you and want to hit you. And if they get away from a blocker, they are just going to hit you hard. You have to be fearless. And it really kind of separates guys. And it's why guys that run, like the one thing that stands out about Tank, same thing that stands out about watching the Bucks dude, Bucky Irving. Like, God, this guy's running his ass off. He runs so hard. The Bears example I was using is like, Swift was kind of tap dancing. Then they put in the other guy, like 23. Like, God, this guy's running hard. And you don't need to be the most talented guy to make, obviously all these guys are talented to make the NFL. But you could be third or second on the depth chart. And if you don't have some, elite guy in front of you, if things start going bad, you're going to get some run. And the easiest way to stand out, and I've seen it with coaches and I've seen it with GMs, is just run your ass off. Because if you do, you might just run through a tackle. You might just, there might be a hole and all of a sudden you got a 25-yard run and boom, you're on the map. Because part of that mentality is usually established on special teams covering kicks, and you just carry it right over to offense. Where some of these guys, they just don't want contact, which is understandable. I wouldn't want contact either, but I don't play running back. And if you don't want contact as a running back, it's going to be really, really hard to be successful in the NFL or willing to run through contact. Was listening to you debate Colin about the greatest national programs in college football. One I struggle to rank is Clemson. Clemson had a near decade-long run of elite quarterback play. Taj Boyd, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, which included 2 national titles. They also had a pretty legendary loss, so they went to 3. Even more appearances and several strong New Year's Six bowl game wins. Who do you compare them to all time? And are they a better program than Oregon? That's a good question. Well, obviously you have the titles. That's, they have been more successful in the internet era than Oregon because they won a natty they've been to 4 national titles, 15, 16, 18, and 2019. And they've won 3. They won in 1981, and then obviously they won 2 with one with Deshaun and one with Trevor. I think Oregon has been more consistent, but has Oregon ever won a national title? No, they have not. They've been to 2. They lost them both. 2010, they lost to Cam Newton. 2014, they got killed by Ohio State. I think if you were betting on a program, you'd give the nod to Clemson. But if you were betting on a program over the next 40 years, you would bet on Oregon. You wouldn't hesitate. My take on I think if you have, I can't go historical, right? I wasn't alive in the 60s and the 70s, but I can just go the 90s through my adult life. To me, the best programs pretty easily is Ohio State. Like, we'll see if Alabama can sustain this, but Alabama was great when Nick Saban was there. We remove him. Now I'm faithful in DeBoer, but we'll see. What's his next 10? Like, is he going to go to 5 Final Fours? Colin didn't mention LSU, which in my life, right, especially the internet age starting around 2000, LSU has won 3 national titles with 3 different coaches. They won one with Nick Saban, they won with Les Miles, and they won with Ed Ogeron. Like, that's how could you have Oregon over LSU? So to me, it's Ohio State. Obviously, I wasn't alive for Bear Bryant, but pretty clear Alabama is like, I mean, one of the most, it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers or Green Bay Packers. I mean, it's probably the most historic. The USC thing's tough because for most of my life, USC has sucked. They had like a 6-year run with Pete Carroll, especially the 3 years where they were kicking everyone's ass. But you remove him. When I was a kid, UCLA worked USC. Like, look at USC now. They went 7-5 last year with the number 1 overall pick. They're 3-3. They look like another 7-5 team. So it's not like they're that good right now. Now they have been good, definitely before I was alive, like the 60s and the 70s. But I I don't know. I think sometimes they get overhyped. So to me, it's like Ohio State's an easy one, Bama's an easy one. Um, then you could just make arguments for a bunch of other people. I have a hard time leaving LSU out just because 3 national titles in the last 25 years. Actually, less than that because Saban's was in 2003. So I that's like 3 national titles in they actually won 2003. I forget Les Miles year, but Ed Ogeron's was 2019. I don't think it's inconceivable that Brian Kelly gets to a couple Final Fours in the next 5 years. So they won in 03, 07, and 19. I'd have LSU in there for sure. Then we could just debate. Looks like Texas is about to go on a little run. I think Oklahoma historically has been pretty incredible. Oklahoma and Texas. You could like combine those two. So Oklahoma has 4 national titles. Actually, no, they have more, but some of these. In recent years, they won a couple in the 70s. They won in 1980. They won in 1986. I don't know what's unclaimed national titles. Claimed national titles. They won in 85, 2000. They've been a national finalist 2000, 2003, 2004, 2008. So, yeah, it's a good debate. Fun talk. Have a great day. Adios.